everyone. Welcome to my show. Autumn is here. I am the host. Today, I am here with Glenna Hecht. She was a caregiver, and it inspired her to write a book. So she wants to share some of her experience with you. So let's welcome her to the show. Welcome to the show, Glenna.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Francine. It's such a delight. And I'm excited to share information with your listeners, your caregivers that are out there, and folks that are interested in this topic. So thank you. Appreciate being here.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out. I really appreciate, when caregivers come out, that sometimes people don't want to tell their stories because it's really difficult sometimes. So thank you. But tell me a little bit about yourself first.
Absolutely. I'll share a little bit about my professional background because it has impact for sure on this story. And so I am from Chicago. What you're hearing is a Chicago accent, and live in Dallas, Texas. And for most of my adult professional life, I was heading human resources and training and development for very large companies, and have been very fortunate to work with some extraordinary organizations and to be in a leadership type of a role, worked with Starbucks, worked with retail companies, worked with Accenture's e-commerce incubator. And then for the last 16 years, I've had my own HR consulting and training company. So I do a lot of speaking. Okay. And if you know anything about HR, and I'm sure many of you do in companies, if you work in organizations, you know we're the fix-it people. Yeah. So somebody has a payroll issue, we fix it. A benefit issue, we fix it. And when you're a senior leader, you kind of get everything. So guess what approach I took when caregiving and dementia crossed my path, and thinking that I could fix that. I don't have brothers and sisters. I'm an only child. So that adds a different layer of responsibility, as you'd imagine.
Absolutely.
And one of the key pieces of information, and folks may raise an eyebrow when they hear this, is that my mom, who had dementia for 9 years that I was aware of, it could have been longer than that for sure, but my mom had dementia, and we had a very difficult relationship. And I moved to Texas because part of it was we were just in an estranged situation, and it was much easier. Mm-hmm. And my family said to me when I picked up and moved, at some point, you're going to have to face this and come to terms with your mom. And I went, okay, I'll deal with it when the time comes. Well, the time came, absolutely. And it was labeled with the title caregiver, but I'll share more about that with you in just a few moments.
Okay. So as you were a caregiver, I'm sure, of course, it was a surprise to you. You didn't know exactly what you were getting into. So what are some of the things that kind of surprised you that you didn't expect to be involved in?
I will tell you, with the statement you just made, you're being very complimentary. I didn't know exactly. I didn't know at all. And so it was a complete and total surprise. One day I was sitting at my desk, Francine, in Dallas, and my cousin called me and said, your mom is missing in Chicago. You need to come home. And I was in a senior leadership role, but in that moment, and I know your caregivers that are listening can relate to this. On one hand, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have my family, I have my job, I have my responsibilities. And on the other hand, you're thinking, I only have one mom, what do I do? And I walked into my boss's office and said, I need to leave. I only have one mom and nobody else is there to take care of her. I don't know when I'll be back. And if you need to fill my role, do what you need to do. So when I went to Chicago, Francine, my mom was standing in front of the building with a raincoat and no clothes on, and thought the angels were after her. And so I whisked her into a car and drove to the hospital and said, my mom is seeing angels. I'm not sure exactly what to do. And they brought her in after many hours for testing and ran a number of different tests. And the doctor, imagine this picture, wheeled my mom out in a gurney, and I was standing with my cousin and best friend. And he said, "We think your mom has dementia." And then he looked at the blank look on my face.
Mhm.
And I said, "Okay, you're going to give her a pill and she'll be all right." And he realized that I had no idea what that meant. And he rewound the tape
Mhm.
and said, "Okay, let me tell you exactly what's going on." So I had no idea until that moment what the D word was. And many people experience the same thing with Alzheimer's and all the other types of dementias that are out there.
Right.
What really surprised me, so many things, but the one that was very difficult for me to deal with, I don't know if you faced the same thing as well, is that when my mom was in the hospital, I was staying in her apartment. And it really brought in front of my face all the things that I didn't know about. So I realized there were containers of food in cabinets. There were 40 white shirts with tags on them because obviously she forgot she had them and bought another one. And as I was going through the apartment, witnessing this, there were two things that were going on. One was all of the conversations I had heard that gave me clues that I just didn't know to pay attention to. And the other was this intense guilt of I should have known. And all I can remember is saying to myself, "You have no idea what you're dealing with. You don't know how this works. You don't know what you're going to face." And my mantra very, very quickly became put one foot in front of the other and you'll deal with what comes up tomorrow because you don't know what the next day after that will be. And so I would say to your listeners, you try to figure it out, and I'll share more about that in a minute, but you try to figure it out. And the best thing that you can do is give yourself some grace, take a breath, and realize that with the information that you have or you gather, you're doing the best you can. And just take the next step, and then you'll take the next step and allow yourself to move in that type of fashion. And that will certainly help. And then I'll share all kinds of other interesting things that came up along the way.
Okay, I just want to ask you this because you had said that you were estranged. You had a strange relationship with your mom, and now you had to become her caregiver. So in that instance, which you just described here, where you went to her house and you started seeing different things, and you realized you didn't know certain things about her. How is that emotionally to you? Because so many people have a situation where they're not speaking to their parent and then they end up being the caregiver. How did that hit you emotionally? And what would you say to people who are in a strange relationship with their parent and may become their caregiver?
Well, let me go to the end and then I'll answer your question. So my mom was in Chicago. I put her in a facility with the thought that I would see her every 6 months. Give her a pill, she'll be there, I'll come and visit, everything will be fine. But my mom had a lot of energy like I do, and she was a flight risk. And
Ah,
so she would walk out the door and want to walk 20 miles to go home. And so in 6 weeks, it became very clear she couldn't be where she was, and I had to move her to Dallas. And then 5 other moves over a period of time while she was here. And so she spent the majority of the time living in Dallas, and I'm here as well. So the situation in between is the most interesting, but I will share with you that we developed the most extraordinary love affair. Dementia was one of the greatest gifts I ever received in my life. And folks hear that and they go, "What?" And so some of that is because of what I stumbled upon, which is the dementia relationship game I'll share with you. But when my mom passed and she was 19 days shy of 100 years old, and so very long life, and I was with her all the time. The relationship was completely healed. There were things I learned about her I never knew while growing up. And at the point that she passed, they said, "Is there anything that you want to say to her?" And I said, "We've said everything. There's nothing left unsaid." Most kids can't say that. And so I would say our relationship was completely healed. But to answer your question, because I'm on groups a lot and I talk to people a lot, and they say, do I need to do this? Do I need to be a caregiver if I don't talk to my parent or I don't like them? And I say to them, that's not my decision to make, right? You have to determine what's right for you.
Hmm.
But I know that um, in every relationship, it's 50-50. And so there was a part of that estrangement that was my behavior as well. And I knew that when the responsibility crossed my path, that I wanted to take it because I wanted to be able to say I had done the best I could. Even though I didn't know what I was doing 90% of the time in the beginning, but I really wanted to show up for her, but for me, and to be able to have a level of peace with it. And again, I think caregivers, it's such a fine line between guilt and trying and all of the things that you go through because you don't know what you're doing. There's no job description, there's no handbook, right? And, you keep questioning yourself, am I doing the right thing?
Hmm.
And it's the right thing for them and it's the right thing for you. But that's why I said, don't think 10 months in the future, think the next day. What do you have to do? And literally one foot in front of the other. And that was my mantra for 9 years.
Let's talk about how that helped you cope with it. I know that you created a game, so kind of tell me a little bit about that.
I will. I'm going to tell you what led up to that because it answers your question of how do you cope with it. Because of my background and the roles that I had in my career, I was a fixer. That's just what I was. And so here I thought, okay, if I can fix a company or I can fix a problem, I can surely fix my mother's dementia. How'd that work for me, right? Right, Francine? And so when I brought her to Dallas, I was bound and determined I was going to fix her. So I went to groups. I did research. Nothing told me how to interact with her. And I thought, okay, keep trying. And then I even went as far as to become a certified assisted living manager because I thought they're calm, they handle it well. That's the secret sauce. And I took the certification. Did it do anything? No. And so I went, okay, that obviously didn't tell me how to deal with her. And that was for 2 years. I spent 2 years trying to fix her. And then one day I went to visit, and your caregivers that are listening will have had this experience. And my head blew off my body is the only way to describe it. My mother had the same conversation 7 times in a row.
Wow.
Right. And every time, and then she would say it and I'd say, I heard you. And then she would say it again and I'd go, I heard you. And then by the 5th, 6th, 7th time, my voice got louder until I got angry.
Wow.
And nobody in the facility she was in looked at me. Nobody. And I thought, they're used to this, but I'm not used to this.
You're not.
It's not who I am. It's not how I behave.
Right.
And I was so embarrassed by my behavior that I literally ran out of the facility and got in my car and I cried for about an hour just because I'm better than that. And I knew that wasn't how I wanted to show up.
But it could take you there.
It does take you there. It does. And I drove home and I literally walked in and I walked to the closet of my bedroom and I curled up in a little ball in the corner of my closet and cried myself to sleep. I was so embarrassed. And when I got up, something had shifted, Francine. And I kept hearing the words in my mind, rather. Listen, observe, watch, travel. Listen, observe, watch, travel. And I thought, okay, I don't know what this is, and I decided in that moment, if I couldn't fix her, I was going to be the best daughter that I could.
Mhm.
Just be with her. Didn't matter, right? And so that led to about probably a year of me just going and holding her hands and telling her about life. And one day I visited her, and you can see this picture in your mind, the assisted living facility with the saggy couches and the linoleum floor and the wood paneling, right? And everyone's dozing. And it's pretty sad, but it is what it is. And my mom was in a wheelchair, and I walked in and I was sitting with her, and she literally started to pose. So she did one of these and puts her head up to the fluorescent lights, and I'm watching like, what is going on? And she says, "Oh, I love it, the sun and the sand on my toes, and this is wonderful." And the first thought that's going through my mind is, oh, this is the tunnel. Is she getting ready to right, go to the, and I was getting really close, and she was happy. So I thought, okay, if this is what it's like, then this is a pretty good thing. And she was with her best friend. They were watching boys. I mean, she's telling me the whole thing. But what was so remarkable was it wasn't a memory. She was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my gosh. So for the next month or so, I was bound and determined I was going to get back to that beach. I am going to the beach. And I would walk in and I would say, "Are you at the beach?" "No." End of conversation. "Are you with your friend Amy?" "No." End of conversation. "Are you 22 years old?" "No." And so I thought, all right, this is obviously not working.
Mhm.
So I walked in one day and I said, "I forgot. How old are you?" And she looked at me and said, "Guess." And that became the beginning of a question and answer game. And I, I figured out kind of how it worked, it became a ritual, it became a game. There are rules to the game. There are ways that you show up. And so for almost 7 years, we played this game every single time I went to see her. Someday she was 80, someday she was 30, someday she was 50, someday she was 60. And the part of it that was so remarkable is, again, they're not remembering it. They are there.
Right.
So that is really what I outlined and wrote about in terms of the "How old are you today" game, because there was a point where I thought, all right, this is pretty cool, and I'm really having a wonderful experience with my mom. Is it only for me? And so I started to tell other people, and they tried it, and it was quite miraculous. So what I always say is, it's connection versus correction. If there's a line that I would want to leave people with, that's it.
Yeah.
Because some folks have said to me, well, what do I do if my mother says, "Oh, dad's in the other room and he's been gone for 25 years, right?" They go, "Do I lie to them?" I go, "No." But I said, but what good is arguing with them? Because A, they're not going to remember it the next day.
Right.
And you'll feel guilty when you get upset and realize it didn't do anything. So the best answer is just to go, "Really? That's great. What do you think he's doing?" And use it as an opportunity to learn about the things that went on in their life that maybe you didn't know anything about. And so that's really this extraordinary experience that I had of time travel. And that's the only way to describe it. And so we'd go forward and backward, and I would ask her very specific ages and, "Are you older? Are you younger?" And she would respond. So it was a miraculous experience.
That's awesome. And you
Yeah.
got to be able to communicate with her on her level, wherever she was. And this
Totally.
way, it wasn't, forced, or it wasn't you getting frustrated. It was like, okay, she's at the beach now. She's
Yes.
talking to a friend now. And now you can participate with her in that
Yes.
in that moment. So you make more memories with her, even though you're you're not at the beach, but you're making more memories with her and good memories. Good memories.
Ab-
That's awesome.
absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. I'll be honest that the game saved me in a couple of very difficult situations. So, one that I can think of, and I'll share this because your listeners definitely will experience this, and it's frightening. And that is, everyone says to you, there will be a point where your parent doesn't know who you are,
Mhm.
right? And you go, oh my God, really? And so I kept hearing about it and hearing about it and thought, is this the day? Is this the day? And one day I walked into the same nursing home and she was in her wheelchair sleeping. And when she got up, it was very clear that she had no idea who I was. Just, this really sort of glazed expression on her face.
Mhm.
And I had learned by then I would never say hello, mom, to her when I came in, because if she thought she was 55 and that made me 13, she couldn't understand who this woman was with grayish hair that's calling her mom. You know what I mean? So she would like look at me and the eyes would go back and forth, which told me she was trying to process what I was saying. So I would just go in and say hello. And based on where she was, then I knew how I could respond. But this particular day, she was glazed. And the anxiety was just bubbling to the top. And in my head, though, screaming at me was play the game, play the game, play the game. And I went, okay. And so all I can say is it was divine intervention because I'll tell you what happened. When I played the game with her, I forgot how old are you? And that day she looked younger. And I said, are you 50? And she went, she was very offended. No, do I look 50? I said, no, 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 you look lovely. Are you 40? No. Are you older? Are you younger? I'm younger. Are you 35? No. Older or younger? Younger. At that point, she was 32 years old.
Oh, okay.
I was not born until she was 39.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't that she didn't know me. I didn't exist. I didn't exist. And so when and literally I could go, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? And so it was really amazing because it gave me an opportunity to understand her behavior. There were times when she was angry and she would say things that were not very nice, not to me, but just not very nice.
Right.
And I would play the game and realize she was at a point in her life where she was in an altercation with somebody, not me, not the caregivers, whatever, had nothing to do with us, but she was in that moment where that's what was going on. And so just a remarkable experience. And I encourage people, try the game over and over and over again. And they go, well, will it work? And I go, I don't know, but try.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Worth
And,
it.
and absolutely. And if it does, and you have a wonderful experience, it's fabulous, but it's better to have tools in your chest to be able to try. So it was, I learned things that I never knew in my entire life. And I was very blessed to be able to have this experience.
And the book is How Old Are You Today?
It is How Old Are You Today? And it is dementia, a mother, a daughter, and the game that transformed their lives. And it just won an award, the International Impact Book Award for Health and Dementia.
Awesome. Oh my God.
Very exciting.
That's great. That's great. Some people, we go through this experience, it's very difficult. And sometimes it's very emotional. And, we need the tools. Sometimes we just don't have the tools to get to the other side or to get to the other point. And I'm so glad that you have something that you're sharing with others that can help them and it help them to be able to deal with their parent that has dementia and just have more moments with them, which is great.
Absolutely.
I remember the anxiety I had that she would not remember my name. That's the only thing I knew about Alzheimer's, that she would wander and she wouldn't remember my name. And I waited for her to wander. She didn't, and she never forgot my name.
Oh my gosh, how
Very
fortunate you
grateful
are.
because I had no other tools to work with, but she never forgot, and I was just very grateful of that. That was a big thing to me. But I do know the anxiety of that. Your mom or your dad forgetting your name, and how that would feel. So I'm grateful that you are here sharing your experience, and you have something else to offer the community, a community of caregivers. So is there anything else that you would like to say or like to share with the audience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I would also say is dementia and Alzheimer's and being a caregiver can be lonely. And so I sat down, and when I wrote this book, I will share with you, Francine, it took 11 years to do so. And not because I'm not a bad writer, not because of anything other than that. First, I had to grieve when I lost my mom and kind of put my life together. But more than that, the reason it took so long was I had to become the person that was willing to be vulnerable on paper. And, as a caregiver, I always thought that I had to get it right, or that it had to be perfect, or that there was one way. And I made a lot of mistakes. I messed up. I lost my temper. I cried. There were a lot of days where I didn't feel like I was doing it right. And I finally said, in order for you to make a difference in the world on this topic, caregivers need to know that everybody is feeling the same thing, and that we're doing the best that we can. And here's a message I want to give to your listeners. You are my hero. You have the hardest job on the planet. Watching someone you love go through something that is indescribable while taking care of you and your family and trying to do the best you can. So I want you to know my heart goes out to you. The proceeds of the book, and my commitment is to have 200,000 people read this and donate $2 million to dementia research and Alzheimer's research, because I think making a difference and slowing this down is the most important thing that I can do on this planet. So I just want to thank you for having a very important show, and thank your listeners for being willing to get information and knowing there's people that really want to help them.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate you and the time and effort. And, you're just getting all this information out there. And I wish you the best with getting 200,000 people to read your book. I'm sure it's very interesting. It's a very interesting tool to have. So thank you for pouring in your heart and being vulnerable. It's hard to be vulnerable when you go through that, because you don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to, people to know your mistakes, So I thank you for being vulnerable and being able to let that out and be able to give what you have to offer other people.
Absolutely. And your listeners, I know you're giving them a QR code to leave a review, but if they do, there's also a free handout that they can get that's got rules that my mom lived by, how to show up, etc. It can certainly help them as well.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for giving us the time today, Glenna. We really
My pleasure.